We have quite an inspiring leader joining us for the next session. Ladies and gentlemen, we have with us Mr. Utsav Malhotra, Chief Operating Officer, Noise. So I request you to please join me on dais. Well, ladies and gentlemen, our motive here is to share latest developments in digital industry, whether it's here or overseas. And now we have quite a interesting session coming up for you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, bootstrapping a business to leadership. So we have amongst us, please put your hands together for none other than Mr. Utsav Malhotra, COO Noise. Hello, sir. Thank you so much for being here, joining us. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Good afternoon, everybody. I think this is pretty much an ideal time for food coma to set in, and just the right time for us to be talking about what it takes to persevere and build a business when clearly nobody else is standing for you. I'll spend about, say, 10 to 15 minutes talking about the journey of a nonchalant, absolutely non-existent business to today becoming world number 3 smartwatch brand. And when I say this, it's a matter of pride for all of us that just after Apple and Samsung, Noise today sells world's largest number of smartwatches. And we'll just start by trying to decode what bootstrapping typically stands for. And for the grammar Nazis, this is one of those rare verbs, which is called a gerund. And gerunds essentially are a form of verb only, right? What does bootstrapping really mean? It basically means you'll have limited to no resources and nobody standing by you whilst you are supposed to deliver growth. Isn't that pretty much science for all of us when we talk about Newton's laws, right? Unless there is inertia, things will continue to be in the same state, which is stationary. The reality is that all businesses typically go through asking this question, and very few are fortunate to know what it takes to raise money. See, we all decide when we want to be embarking on a journey, it's like riding a bike, right? You get on a bike, it's very easy, till such time you realize that your feet are strapped to the pedals. There is no coming off it. And that is pretty much the journey of an entrepreneur. When you start out with a vision, you don't start with the idea of having pit stops. But continuing to do this is an endurance game. And what does it take for you to endure is what we'll discuss today. There are some hard facts that I want to talk about. Some absolute bare truths. 80% of all startups fail. And this is not me making up a number, right? This is a published stat, which basically means 4 out of 5 startups will end with a not so pleasant ending. About as many shut down because they have cash flow problems. And this is all about bootstrapping, right? Why does a business need infusion of cash? You only need cash to keep the business going. And if you have cash flow problems and you can't sustain a business, chances are you will end where you will end. And 90% of those who end up raising the money also don't end up lasting beyond their first raise. And this is astronomically catastrophic, right? If you come to think of it, 9 out of 10 businesses don't handle the first raise well. And this first raise typically is what is an angel round, friends and family, people who are counting on you and you are counting on them. And not only do you lose money for yourself, but for the people who probably are the most important in that journey, right? And in reality, when you talk about small businesses, 3 out of 4 end up funding themselves. There is no other way of doing it. You either end up using your reserves, you going through friends and family rounds, whatever it takes. But mostly, people end up losing momentum, end up losing steam. Why does this happen? Because we thought that running a startup was easy, running a D2C was easy, right? We've spent half a day talking about how technology is an enabler, D2C businesses are at their buoyant best, uh, democratization of startups. We've spoken about all of these themes. And these are themes that we continue to hear. Where does the problem really lie? Because Murphy's law is real. Things will go wrong. You know why? Just because they can. Right? And you don't account for this variable change for why things will go wrong and don't plan for it. And whilst we were talking about a marketer's FOMO, there's also something known as an entrepreneur's optimism, right? Every entrepreneur, everybody who ever wanted to start a business, started out with optimism कि मेरा वाला तो उस 10% में ही होगा जो successful होंगे, right? But where does the challenge lie? There is not one, but many challenges that we don't kind of foresee coming our way. Because when we talk about D2C, we end up forgetting a few things, right? We end up forgetting that it is not about the obsession of creating a product or having the right solution. When you drive traffic, you have to convert that traffic. You have to have an offering that is robust enough for people to engage. How many people actually think that getting traffic is easy? Of course it is easy. Digital marketing opened doors for getting traffic at ease, at low cost. But you have to convert that traffic. You also have to realize that as business grows up, there are multiple skills needed and you don't have as many skills as a founder. And we don't have the luxury of getting all those skills to build it. Most people forget that it's not about solving multiple problems, but the prioritization of some of those problems. It's also about the fact that there will be supply chain challenges that you're currently not foreseeing because you've made one product. You have to last the marathon. After selling, what happens? What happens to after sale? Because once products go back, they will also come back. And what do you do with those products? Because it's not the product coming back, right? When somebody taught us quality back in the day, the easiest explanation was that you should have the customer come back and not the product. How do you even test the market that your product is right for the market? And most importantly, if you see success and the industry sees success, you will realize your biggest challenge, which is competition. Fish will come where there will be blood. Everything ever that saw even the remotest success saw more competitive intensity. When we started out as a smartwatch company back in the day about 4 years ago to now, we have had 214 brands at last count that got added to this space and new are getting added every day. Imagine today, for everybody that looks at a business and says, "Inhone bana liya, we will also be able to do it." And what does it take smartwatch banane mein? You are fighting not one, you're fighting 214 plus brands that will emerge on an everyday basis. And are you accounting for that? Because they're already ahead in the race, right? And it's not all is glum, right? There are some success stories. We've had businesses that are really big, large success stories and names that I'm sure you've all heard of, who started with literally nothing. We've had brands that started with as much as $500 in their pocket, $1,000, literally peanuts, right? And we started with as much. We were not the brand that started with the mega bucks. The noise story is no different. We started out by selling phone covers. And I'm telling you that today, not only are we India's largest smartwatch company, we're world's third largest in terms of volume sales, right? So the reality is you have to start. And therefore, how do you do it? What is the magic here? And people may be wondering what the secret sauce is. There is no secret sauce, right? There is just plain wisdom. And because there is that continuous lack of judgment that is getting marred by the fact that there is entrepreneur's optimism, that I've got it figured out, that you end up leaving prudence and wisdom out of the window. And we'll spend the next slide really talking about what some of these essentials are. What does it take? Right? I call it the 7-step guide, and of course, feel free to accept or reject it, but it is the guide that worked for us. It is what helped us get where we are at today, right? The most important thing is validate your idea. Most businesses, most founders, flavor of the season, Shark Tank, we've seen episodes galore where founders go into their tank, founders start a business, obsessing over product, right? Business is not about having a great product. It is about validating if there is product market fit. And most businesses struggle to get that right. It is not that one person is willing to buy a product. Why is it that most businesses run out of cash flow? Because they realize that either the addressable market that you are chasing or the velocity, or what you can refer to as rate of growth for that market or the niche that you've taken, is very, very small. Please validate if there is enough room for growth and there is enough addressable market available for you to enter. If you want to, let's say, sell shampoos in Africa, you are basically limiting yourself to a lot of constraints to how much that business can scale, as opposed to saying, I will sell ready-to-eat meals. Right? So give yourself that benefit of doubt. Most importantly, it is the small steps that help. You take one step at a time and move forward. Sometimes you need somebody to hold your hand as you're moving forward. A mentor helps. Somebody who has walked that path. Somebody that can tell you what are the pit stops. Somebody who can tell you what the pitfalls are. Somebody who can tell you where you can possibly go wrong. Try getting hold of somebody who can help you walk that journey, who's walked that path before, right? Most importantly, and every marketer has said this a million times, obsess with your customers. Now, how do you build this obsession? And I'll give you an example. When we were talking about a lockdown, literally every marketer's dreaded moment, right? Because the channels of communication were shut. You couldn't get in touch with your customers because there were no stores and people were not walking into stores. We opened doors to channels of communication via Zoom with our customers to set up focus groups on an everyday basis to understand what the consumer sitting at home wanted. Go back to the rudimentary ways, break the mold if it needs to, but figure out ways and means of keeping your ear to the ground to understand what is it that your consumer really expects. Because trust me, there are two variables that continue to operate as life goes on. One is time. With time changing, everything else can change. And the other is the consumer's fickle mind. So please understand when I say this, that saying we are consumer focused or we're looking at consumer data is dissection. It's post-mortem. Speak to the customer beforehand. Know what is it that they want so you can fine-tune the offering for the market. Right? Reinvest everything back into the business. Now, this is the toughest bit, right? Because as you're building, you're basically saying, I am hedging my bets against future, which, how do you do that? But the only way of bootstrapping a business successfully is to ensure that you're hedging your bets against yourself, that your execution will allow you enough headroom for you to be able to make money in the future. There's only two ways of making money. To take money back home today or wait for the windfall tomorrow. There is no third option. And the only way that you can successfully bootstrap a business is to put that money back into the business for growth, because that's the fuel that the ship needs. And whilst you're doing it, there is no substitute for frugality. None whatsoever. And by frugality, I'm not saying cut corners. Because every time you cut a corner, what do? You make one extra corner. So it's not about cutting corners, but it's about being wise about where you're spending money. And this is the problem. The problem is that your biggest heads of spend end up being people and marketing. And most founders get it wrong because for them, the biggest spend bucket ends up being product development. Know where you are spending that money because that's all that really matters. And when I say marketing, start marketing today. If you're thinking when to start, you're already too late. Then you've made yourself a present. You've made yourself a product that is only handy for yourself. You need to create a demand for a product before you can service the market. And therefore, optimize for it today. And last, never do it alone. Because you can't. And that is why I'm saying your biggest investment can be people. It is important to find people who you can align your vision with. For us, I think the biggest success was the fact that we had the initial team that believed in what we were trying to create. They believed in the mission and the purpose of the brand. You know why? Because a very famous director, Quentin Tarantino, once said, you make the best film when everybody on the set makes the same film. You'll realize when you're starting out, the team is small, but the voices are loud. It's only those 6, 7, 10, 20 people, right? And everybody's got their ideas of how business can be built. As a leader, as an entrepreneur, you have to ensure that they're all on the same page. You cannot move forward if you're moving in multiple directions. The only way you move forward is if everybody is pushing forward, right? And that is by far the biggest takeaway that you can take out of this. You'll realize a lot of times you're doing the right thing. It's just that only you are doing the right thing. Now, just to start summarizing all we said, the 5 Ps. Most marketers have their version of 5 Ps. I wrote mine because they worked for us. Define a purpose for existence. Why do you want to build the business? Answering this question is critical. If you don't answer this today, there is never an opportunity to answer this question. Ensure that the purpose has enough meaning to you as a founder or as an entrepreneur and that you can passionately follow it for the rest of its living days. Because if you can't feel passionately about it tomorrow, nobody else will. Find people who can share that passion with you. Because they are the ones who will take it forward with you. You alone can't do it. Have prudence, have wisdom, have the sense of what is important today and what is not. And finally, have perseverance. There is no shortcut to this. Things, like I said, will go wrong. But if you just continue persevering, you will get the results. It's not that we didn't have our failures. We were early to market. And let's face it, when you're early to market, your risk of failure is the highest. We launched a product that occupied 22% market share within the first month of its launch. And we had to pull that product out because we realized that the more I ship, the more returns I'll have to take. You will all be faced with this challenge. But know when to pull the plug and when to press the accelerator. After everything else, I can only say, and this is the philosophy that we've lived by, right? World will tell you 5,000 things to do. But eventually you know what is right for you. Because it is your purpose backed by your passion that will let you persevere, build what you're building. And that's how we've built what today, for the last 3 years in running, has been India's #1 smartwatch brand. 3 years in succession. We are the #1 ranked app in our category on the Play Store at 4.4, and it beats every international player out there. We are the #2 truly wireless stereo brand in the country, and we are the 3rd largest smartwatch brand in the world. How do you do that? You do that because you don't give up. And that is because you don't lose till you give up. Thank you. Happy to take any questions that there may be. Excellent then. Thank you.
You never lose until you actually give up. Wow, what an insightful session. Ladies and gentlemen, can we have a big round of applause for Mr. Utsav? What a session that was. Simply enlightening.